welcome to Pasture Poultry Talk, the podcast that helps you raise healthy, profitable birds for your family, your community, and your customers. I'm your host, Mike Badger, and today I'm going to be joined by poultry nutritionist Jeff Maddox from the Fertrell company. Jeff has developed a new soy-free feed ration using 5 different protein sources, and that formulation is made available through 2 new products, one for production-based flocks and another for the family flocks. But before we get there, let's take a moment and thank our sponsors. Badger's Millside Farm is my farm business where I provide poultry processing equipment and ready-to-lay pullets to producers. If you're shopping for Poultryman scalders and pluckers, I'd like to offer listeners of the show a $300 discount when you purchase both a rotary scalder and any size plucker from Badger's Millside Farm. You can visit millsidefarm.com and use the coupon code PPT300. I'd also like to thank the Fertrell company for sponsoring Pasture Poultry Talk. Today's show focuses on Fertrell's new soy-free rations. And if you've fed soy-free feeds to your chickens, then you've likely experienced slower growth, more expensive feed, and an improperly feathered birds, just to name a few of the potential problems. This episode with Jeff is one of the reasons why I support Fertrell. But don't worry, Jeff isn't the bombastic salesman. He's technical, practical, and interested in feeding your poultry in a way that's healthy and profitable. We'll talk through the problems of soy-free, the solution, and then discuss Fertrell's response to it. Here are some quick events you need to know about coming up really soon. And by soon, I mean a month or so within this podcast air date. So July 21st, 2018, both Jeff and I will be attending and presenting at the Family Farm Field Day in Baltic, Ohio at the Roy L.S. Yoder Farm. On July 28th, I'll be at the Family Days on the Farm in Quarryville, Pennsylvania, and you can find me processing chickens with Eli Reif. Then on August 15th, APA is hosting a workshop on the farm of Stanley Reif in Mifflinburg, Pennsylvania. You can find details and links to all of these events on the appearance page of pasturedpoultrytalk.com. Now let's talk with Jeff Maddox from the Fertrell company. Jeff is a poultry nutritionist who has been working with pastured poultry producers for over 20 years. He's authored a book which is a collection of his most practical feeding and management advice. Pastured Poultry Feeding and Management is now in its 3rd edition. You've actually heard him on this podcast on a variety of topics, including molting hens, mixing feed, black soldier fly, and identifying the cause of feather pecking issues. You can see the show notes at pasturepoultrytalk.com/72 for links to those episodes. With that introduction out of the way, we're going to pick up with Jeff as he answers my first question. What has been the biggest problem with feeding soy-free feeds to this point?
You know, I've been dealing with soy-free feeds now for almost 15 years, and I would have to say that, you know, the new modern breeds have, you know, their parent stock and their genetics have been based on soy-based feeds for, you know, more than 60 years. So it's really tough to take them in a different direction, especially if you're using like a commercially available bird. So, you know, the biggest problems I found is these birds grow really fast and they have a really high nutrient level needs, and we just can't get the correct balance for the breed. And we're seeing this with the soy-free field trials that we're doing, that, you know, birds like the Freedom Ranger do much better than a Cornish cross. But, you know, when you're formulating feeds for any of the more modern breeds, you can't get your balance of protein and energy correct. You know, you can get your protein, but then your energy is going to be deficient, or you can get your energy and then your protein is going to be deficient. We just can't get the right balance and nutrient density in the feeds with what we've had in the past for soy-free alternatives. And even if we do hit the protein number, the other thing that we find is these birds are so dependent upon the amount of amino acids and the balance of the amino acids that we can't get the amino acid balance to get the correct balance of amino acids for the bird's growth and health and performance. You know, so we're either going to be lacking in feathering, or we're going to be lacking in immune system, or we're going to be lacking in growth performance. Previously, we could not quite hit them all.
When people grow a soy-free bird, for example, and they say that they look a little off or they look a little unhealthy because they're missing feathers, that might be attributed to getting a properly balanced feed.
Yeah, in a lot of the soy-free feeds, you can't get the right amount of methionine, which is the first limiting amino acid for poultry. So, you know, if you're limited in methionine, and if you analyzed a feather on a chicken, you would find that it's got an extremely high methionine content. So feathers are actually, 80% protein in themselves when you analyze a feather on a chicken. And of that protein, the methionine is going to be, your lysine is always your largest, but your methionine is going to be right there behind it. And without the right amount of methionine, you're not going to get proper feather follicle formation. You're not going to get proper feathering or covering on the bird. And that's, and some of that goes back to the particular breed, whereas a cob, it has a harder time feathering anyway than, say, a Ross does. So the different breeds are all going to perform a little bit differently, but as a whole, the Cornish cross is not going to get enough methionine out of a soy-free formula to properly develop feathers. And all of our previous soy-free protein alternatives are all methionine deficient. And they're much lower in methionine in comparison to soy-based feeds.
We're going to come to that problem here pretty quickly. Just to put a point on this, and then we'll move on. Obviously the Cornish has a problem. You said the Freedom Rangers do much better on a soy-free feed. Then I'm assuming as you get into the heritage birds, the standard bred options, those do even better on the soy-free feed. Is that
correct?
Okay.
Yep, that is correct. Yep. The further you get away from commercial white chicken, the better they're going to perform on soy-free diets.
What about when producers themselves are trying to meet this soy-free feed option? What are some of the mistakes that they make? Like the biggest obstacles they face or problems? Is it just improperly balanced feed, or is there something else?
Well, so first off, a producer on a soy-free feed is they jump into it assuming that the chicken's going to grow at the same rate as a soy-based feed. They get their chickens, they're all happy, and they get their soy-free feed, and 8 weeks later they've got 2.5 pound, 3 pound chickens, and because they just went into it blindly assuming that all feeds are created equal, and those birds are going to look, they're going to be that 5 and 6 pound roly-poly chicken at 8 weeks, and it doesn't happen that way. So, the first biggest mistake is making that assumption that the chicken is going to grow at the same rate or as fast as what they're used to in the past. Secondly is they don't compensate for the feed deficiencies. There's a lot of poorly formulated soy-free feeds on the market out there, and the grower doesn't know this. I mean, this is not something that the farmer is going to fully comprehend, but being able to identify the deficiencies in the growth pattern and working with someone that's knowledgeable, can help work through it. But, just not compensating correctly for the feed deficiencies, when you go to a soy-based by adding, supplemental ingredients. Some people have great success with, hard boiling cracked eggs or eggs that are unsaleable and sprinkling that on top of the feed. And that's a huge boost to chickens that are on that soy-free feeds.
Okay.
The other thing is the producers don't understand is to make a good soy-free feed, you need at least 4 protein sources, and they need to be 4 protein sources that do not come from the same category of feed or the same species. If you're using a legume, maybe you need, like a pea or a bean, maybe you need to use something else like linseed meal, looking at some fish and some crab meal to get your methionine levels up. But to make a good soy-free feed, no matter who you are, you need at least 4 protein sources to get some type of an appropriate balances. And that's 4 proteins from not the same species or category of plant or animal. You need to diversify it. And this is even true of soy-based formulas. We know that when we take a soy-based formula and we add alternative proteins to it, that the bird's performance goes up significantly. Diversifying a diet is always going to be a good thing if done correctly.
That kind of brings us to one of the points of our call today, our talk is, so you've been dealing with this soy-free issue for a long time. I remember, we published some of the trials in APA, and you present on it all the time and talk to people all the time. All those problems are top of mind, but what has Fertrell done now to address this problem? You have a new product or two on the market?
The light bulb in my head came on, and I found one last missing ingredient that I found to be very palatable by the chicken, and that is sesame meal. Sesame seed meal, after the oil's been pressed out of it, is a very high protein. It'll run 43 to 48% protein. So when I combine that with the field peas and the linseed meal for the omega-3s and the fish and the crab meal, I've been able to design a protein supplement from diversified sources, five different diversified sources, that has a very good palatability. The birds appear to eat it readily, except for the Cornish cross. They're a little bit slow. They're performing on it at nearly an equal rate as a soy-based diet. We can kind of count on, if you're going to finish your Cornish cross at 6 or 7 or 8 weeks, we might need an extra 4 or 5 days or a week to finish it with the soy-free protein pellet. We may not. We're seeing some field trials where they're finishing at the same time on the same amount of feed. So it's been quite encouraging, to bring this to the market. And I know people have been looking for, that perfect soy-free protein replacement. And this is the best that I've been able to find so far.
Thinking about what makes this unique, first of all, you had 5 protein sources. One's fish, one's crab. Sourcing this is not an easy task, I imagine, right? It would be hard for me to go and grab all those individual components and start mixing this up. I mean, it's the ingredients in here. There's a lot of logistics, a lot of thought going into it. Correct?
You got crab meal coming from the Maritimes up in Canada, and you got fish meal and sesame meal coming from Mexico, and you got field peas coming from, the mountain region or the Pacific Northwest or even Canada, and the linseed meal coming from the same areas out there in the Dakotas. It takes a lot of logistics to bring them all together, put them all together, and then, of course, we ran them through a pellet mill and then crumbled them to get the particle size right. And we did that so that the chicken feed isn't a bunch of powder, because chickens don't like powder. They like particles. That's the only reason that we've done that. We've used the same formula in loose meals, but there's so much powder left over at the bottom of the feeder, and the birds aren't aggressively eating it because it's powdery, and that's just not their preference. So while I'm opposed to pellets in most cases, I felt it necessary, if we're going to get the chickens to actually consume this readily and make it palatable, that it needed to be in some processed form that is appealing to the chicken.
One of the things I always think about the soy-free feed, and I know based on your talks in the past, having all those different protein sources coming together, the first thing I know when I run this feed through my ducks, which I just wrapped up here not too long ago, my organic feed and my soy-based feed, I can source 20 miles down the road, but this is not a local feed at all, usually, for anybody.
That's correct.
And I think the other point worth mentioning, like I said, my Muscovies performed very well on this, just over a 3.30, it's like a 3.2, 3.4 feed conversion ratio on the carcass. It seemed to do very well, and you're saying that it's doing very well and performing, in many cases, equal to the previous feed or very close. You're closing that 30% gap that we often hear when you go from soy to no soy feed, right?
Correct. We're closing that gap significantly. We're probably within 5% on performance, feed conversion performance. Some of that depends on management, some of that depends on breed, some of that depends on location. The numbers that I'm seeing, like you just talked about at 3.2, 3.3 feed conversion ratio on your Muscovies, I'm seeing the same, the closeness of feed conversion with the Cornish cross and with the Freedom Rangers. We're about as close to a soy-based feed as I've been able to find so far in soy-free.
I can testify to my ducks. They were not fond of those crumbles when they would eventually crumble down and get a little powdery. Some of the chickens, you can make them eat it by withholding feed for an extra few hours. The ducks would just eat more grass.
Waterfowl are a little bit more stubborn than a Cornish cross.
I don't think we talked about this last time we talked about my feeding, but I ran numbers on sourcing all the ingredients that I had. I had to go get corn. I got some Triticale and the NutriBalancer and this soy-free pellet feed. And my feed cost came in, if I factor in the cost of the pellet, was somewhere around 45 cents a pound, which is pretty comparable to what I buy organic feed from. And that was obviously sourcing all the ingredients individually and mixing it. So I thought that was kind of an interesting bullet point as well.
It's still a little bit higher, with all the logistics of bringing all those different ingredients in from so far away. And I don't know how to avoid it because that's the only place that they're at. But, we're still going to run 10 to 20% higher for, the true feed cost. But you were kind of comparing that to your soy-based feed. So, yeah, we're not going to be that far off. But compared to other soy-free feeds, it's going to be about 25% higher than someone who just wants to use their own local peas, linseed meal, fish and crab meal. And it is going to be higher. But I believe that from what all the field trials we've seen so far, that the performance is we're going to see a 20% reduction in time and better health and mortality and things like that. And I think it's offset by better performance, better health and performance. The bottom line is it's going to perform better, but it's going to cost more.
We never know what the true cost is until we run it through our chickens, right?
That's right.
So this crumble, which is what I've fed, I mixed everything individually, that you're spitting off a new product based on that. And it's actually one that I'm pretty excited about because I know it's conversations we've had and always kind of thought it would be a kind of a dream to get there, but you did it. And that's the homeowner collection, as I think you're calling it. And so talk about what that is, if you would.
So, once we had the protein pellet, we had a better understanding and confidence in the protein blend crumbles that we've put together. It had always been part of my vision to take that and then add, the poultry NutriBalancer, the vitamins and minerals, the trace minerals, the probiotics, the calcium requirement, and add that to the protein crumbles and put it in a package size for the smaller producers, backyarders, the people that just want to raise for themselves, not at a commercial scale of any type. So we can send that out and it has all the required nutrients and then a person can locally source, whether it's cracked corn, whole wheat, barley, rye, any of the carbohydrates or cereal grains. They can locally source that and blend it. Instructions are on the bag, of course. They can blend it themselves at home. They can take a bucket and they can add this much of this and this much of this and mix it up and, they have a feed, and have some confidence in that feed and know what they're actually getting versus going and buying a prepackaged feed somewhere that says plant processed products and plant protein processed byproducts, and you have no idea what those ingredients are, and those ingredients can change on a day-to-day basis just depending on what the cost of the ingredients are. So we now offer this we have a blend for starting chicks, we have a blend for growing birds, any kind of bird, whether it's a meat bird or a laying hen, and then we also have a layer blend that are ready to go. And you can just mix them at the correct proportions with something local, like I said, whole wheat, cracked corn, whatever you can find, whatever you choose to use. Then the homeowner takes charge of that feed making and can see it for themselves and they feel better about it. And the birds are going to do much better on it as well.
Blend here, the protein blend with the vitamins and minerals is 20-pound bag, and the instructions say mix with 25 pounds of medium cracked or coarse ground corn and offer free choice to your poultry. So you end up with a 45 pounds of feed when you're done. But you're saying then in place of corn, you could add 25 pounds of another energy source, right?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have to be corn. So, we just say corn on there. It can be a combination, so if somebody wants to give that diversity to them, they can use, like I said, wheat, barley, whatever they can source locally and they feel comfortable using. They can't use all barley. They shouldn't use all wheat. So a little bit of diversity is going to be a good thing there. They can always contact us here at Fertrell if they have a question about what to add or what not to add.
And what would be the best place to reach out to Fertrell?
Well, email is always the easiest because we can get it. We travel a lot and we do a lot in supporting farmers around the country. So email gets to us actually quicker sometimes than a phone call. But if people, want to talk to somebody, we generally have a nutritional person on staff that can answer questions just about, Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 4 every day Eastern Standard Time. And the number there is 800-347-1566.
You're branching out more now with the new soy-free protein stuff that you're um, kind of manufacturing some feed, if you will. I mean, not the whole bag, but a lot closer to it than what you were before.
And we're not going to get into complete feeds. We work with enough feed mills and feed manufacturers around the country that we don't want to compete with those people at that level. That's not what we do best. We design feed formulations. That's what we do really well. And, working with farmers to get through based on what they have locally available whenever possible. But this being such a complicated blend and also very proprietary, it's a formula that we don't really want to leak out for the public because it's hard to manufacture. It's difficult to get it just right. And I could see a lot of errors from mishandling or otherwise. The vision behind this product is actually to work with feed mills that we're currently working with, and these are being made by feed mills that Fertrell currently works with in our local area. But we're also looking for feed mills that we feel comfortable with in the Midwest and the South, Central, and Pacific Northwest, so it'll make these products more logistically friendly for people across the country. Currently, they're just being made here, nearby Fertrell.
Okay.
We don't have any feed manufacturing equipment here at Fertrell, so they are being made. We have a non-GMO and a certified organic available. They're being made by very reputable, very clean feed manufacturers within 45 minutes, very close to Fertrell.
So speaking of here at Fertrell, you have an event coming up sometime soon?
That's correct. Yep. Fertrell's grand opening of the new building and open house, which is open to the public, will be October 13th. We invite everybody to come. There'll be specials. We're going to be feeding lunch, and we have a guest speaker. Daniel Salatin will be here for the day doing multiple presentations. There'll be tours, farm tours, and production facility tours. You get to put a face to a name. We really have a good time, get everything cleaned up, make it look nice. But it's really nice to meet the people, that we're working with, or we hopefully will be working with in the future.
You have an open house every other year? Is that?
Yeah, we tried to. Building the new building got in the way and kind of messed that all up. So we skipped one of the open houses, but we're catching up, and this year's the year.
But you get your own office now, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, first time since I've been at Fertrell that I've had a solo office.
That's about the extent of my questions, Jeff. Did I miss anything?
I think we covered most of it. I just don't want people assuming that this is going to be cheaper. It's going to be better. It's going to perform better. But, if you're a person who has struggles with sticker shock, you're going to have a hard time getting past it in the beginning. It is going to perform better. Those costs are going to be saved in labor savings and bird performance, but one of those cases where cheaper isn't better. So
I thought of two real quick ones here, Jeff, and we'll just work them
Yeah.
in. Will this work for turkeys, to start turkeys on?
It does. In the years past, if people ask me for a soy-free turkey starter, and I'm like, it's not mathematically possible. There's no way that I can reach the protein requirements and the carbohydrate, and I just can't get to that level. When you're looking for a 26 or a 28% protein starter for turkeys and game birds, you can't get there with the other soy-free ingredients. And I feel really comfortable that this is going to work. We did finish some turkeys on it last year down in Alabama, and they grew great. And all the reports are is they actually tasted better. So this year we'll be doing turkeys from day one, but I expect it to perform quite well on turkeys.
If people are interested in, I'm thinking particularly now of the homeowner blend that you're rolling out, can people buy that? And if so, how do they buy it?
Yes, it is ready for public consumption. Currently, it's only available at Fertrell today. As it gets out into the marketplace, it'll have better availability, but it was set up in a 20 and 25 pound bag so that it could be easily placed into a flat rate, a U.S. Postal flat rate, large flat rate box. So we know that the shipping is going to be a set amount no matter where you are in the U.S. And it'll fit in that box. We can put it in there tightly, tape it up, ship it, and that way we can keep it fresh. And eventually I can see us going to kind of a subscription setup where person says, I need 2 of these a month, or I need 1 of these a month, or I need 1 of these every 2 weeks, and it can roll out on an automatic basis, and they don't have to think about, whether or not their protein is going to arrive on time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
All right.
I'm looking forward to running that particular thing, that option through my Freedom Rangers that are coming here very, very soon. So we'll see how they go.
Yep. I'm anxious to hear how it performs for you.
We'll know in 9 weeks.
All right.
Hey, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Many thanks, Jeff, for joining the podcast once again. I hope you enjoyed that conversation, enjoyed the insights that Jeff provides about the challenges of feeding a no-soy poultry feed. If you would like to contact Fertrell about either of their new soy-free products, the protein crumbles or the Just Add Corn blend for the homeowner, visit the show notes page at pasturepoultrytalk.com/72 for more information. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for the show's email list. I'll notify you each time a show is published, and as a bonus for subscribing, you'll receive a copy of my differentiating pastured poultry talk that I delivered last year at the Growing Pennsylvania Organic Farms Conference. And speaking of being notified of new episodes, I'm happy to report that you can find Pastured Poultry Talk on Spotify and TuneIn. TuneIn, as I understand it, powers the Amazon Echo, which means you can stream the podcast by saying something like, Alexa, play Pastured Poultry Talk. If you allow Alexa into your home, I haven't allowed Alexa into my home yet, but if you do, give it a try and let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear some feedback on that. And I checked into my iTunes reviews recently, and I'm pleasantly surprised to see some very nice comments. John from Jack Farm says, excellent information and interviews on pastured poultry. Sound quality is decent and gets better with the new episodes. The knowledge passed on is what makes this a 5-star. Keep it up, Mike. So just want to say thanks, Jack. Thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time to leave a review at the iTunes store. Your sound quality is something that's getting better as I do this podcast thing more often, as I do more podcasts for other people. And it's hard to believe that we started this show recording off of a free conference line with no post-audio processing at all. If you listen to episode 1, you might actually believe that, but because it's self-evident now. But sound quality, I'm investing in this show. I'm going to Podcast Movement next week, which is July 23rd or so, spending a couple days out there learning and interacting with people of the podcast craft. So I'm not sure what will happen there. That's not really a poultry-related thing, but if anything happens, I'll share it with you for sure. Jolted Jack in another review says, Mike Badger gives great advice for someone looking into raising poultry. The amount of detail in the episodes is outstanding. Thanks for listening, Jolted, and thank you for the feedback. Feedback is always appreciated, and you can leave it on iTunes or you can send it my way at mike@pasturepoultrytalk.com. That's all I got. Thank you for listening. Till next time.